What is up guys, Fi here, and this is a bit of a tweak on the bot lane combos video I did before. We're going to be looking at when you would want to pick an AD, what they're good at, what supports are good with them, and also what supports and AD carries you should pick when you're against them. So the AD who I get requested to do stuff for the most is definitely Jinx. So we're going to start with her first, and the first thing we'll look at is why would you pick her anyway? So her biggest strength is that she has an amazing mid and late game, and part of that is because she has a huge range and an attack speed steroid in fights. She also just has to farm and survive in lane, which creates this kind of no pressure playstyle, right? You aren't pressured to kill the enemy or get ahead or snowball because you're going to be a beast mid and late game anyway. You have your passive to clean up or escape in fights, you have a global ultimate, and she snowballs harder than probably any other AD carry when she gets a few kills. Her biggest weakness is that she has no escape, so she's really vulnerable if you position badly. The other thing is that especially this patch, after her ultimate and her Q nerf, she's actually very weak in lane. Like, she doesn't really have much kill potential anymore, and her trading potential is down with her Q nerf as well. The final weakness for Jinx is that she doesn't really have any bursts. Like, she doesn't really have any abilities that do a ton of damage, so it takes her time to kill someone. So overall then, why would you pick Jinx over any other AD carry? Well, she's probably close to the overall best late game AD carry when you take in everything, like how safe she is, how much damage she does, how good late game she is, etc. She can cover up bad laning phases of people as well. So if you're not very good in lane, then Jinx is a good pick for you because there's no pressure to win your lane. All you have to do is not die. So she has a very high range and a pretty safe team fight, meaning that it's more position based rather than quick mechanics. So why would you not pick her then? Well, she relies really heavily on positioning to stay safe. So if you are bad at team fighting and you make a lot of mistakes, positional errors that you need dashes to cover up for, then Jinx is not the carry for you. The other thing is she doesn't have as much outplay potential as other ADs. Like, she can outplay people, but it's a lot harder to do because she just has to stand there and auto attack to do her damage. So there isn't really much she can dodge, there isn't really much she can outplay, and if you're behind, then you can't really turn it around. Okay, so that is the why you would pick her, right? That is why you would take her over other AD carries, but now we're going to go on to when to pick her. So this really applies for champion select, I guess. This is what you should be looking for and also looking to avoid. So Jinx is an immobile carry, meaning that in general, you need the enemy team to focus on other things than you. Like, that is how you do damage and you don't die if they're focusing on something else. There's kind of two ways of doing this, right? Either you have a big front line of tanks that they can't get through and they can't get to you, or you have other threats that the enemy team have to focus first. So when you're looking at your front line, this is looking at your top and jungle picks mostly. It's things like Maokai, Hecarim, Sejuani. Those are things really good for you. It's anything to lock down the enemy team and stop them getting to you. When you're looking at mid lane, you have these kind of twofold, right? You're either looking for someone to keep you alive or a threat that they have to focus. Now, the ideal situation for you is a bit of both, right? It's a threat and someone who can keep you alive. Things like Orianna, Azir, Lux are really good at keeping you alive with their shields, but they're also threats that do a lot of damage. So on the other side, Fizz, Zed, Katarina are also indirectly useful because the enemy team needs to focus them, so it removes some pressure for you, and it means that if they're focusing on them, they're leaving you alone to do damage. So that's your side of the champion select, right? That's what you're looking for on your team, but what about on the enemy team? Well, the things you're bad versus in lane is anyone who can lock you down and anyone who can gank you a ton makes your life really hard. When we're looking at team fights, pretty much all of Jinx's damage comes from auto attacks, meaning that she ideally wants longer fights and to keep auto attacking over and over. Like, she doesn't have burst and she doesn't want fights to end quickly. So when we're looking at the top lane, it's things like Irelia and Hecarim. These carry top laners are what you want to avoid. They have some crowd control, a gap closer, and also a lot of damage to kill you, which means they can get onto you, they can keep you there, and then they can kill you. Those are the three things you want to avoid. When we're looking at junglers, it's kind of the same idea. Someone who can get to you, lock you down, and kill you. So things like Rengar, Vi, Gragas, and Shaco. Rengar and Vi are the two biggest problems I ever face on Jinx, because Rengar, for example, he locks you down with his net, and then he can just one-shot you while you're rooted. There's nothing you can do. When we're looking at mid lane champions, it's the things that can burst you quickly or have some very hard crowd control that you really need to dash to dodge. So things like LeBlanc and her chains, Katarina, you need to dash away from her damage when she spins and ults, and also Fizz and dashing away from his ultimate. Right, so that is kind of your team fighting and your general team, but what about your lane phase? Well, the champions you want to be pairing with are things like Braum and Janna. Now, Braum is really good for a kill lane because of his passive, and he also has some defensive capabilities as well. That's the important thing to note, really, is that Jinx needs some protection because in team fights especially she needs it, but also in lane, a lot of your time will be spent on the back foot just farming. So Braum has his passive, which can let you kite really well, and he also has his ultimate, which will knock people up. Both can be used offensively and defensively. If you want just a really defensive support, then Janna is really good. She can keep you alive in lane with her shield and her ultimate if they go aggressive, but more importantly, you pick her for teamfight. So that's the idea behind a support with Jinx, right? You want some defensive capabilities, and if you want to go aggressive, if it's an easier lane, then you can take someone that can also go offensive. So when Jinx is actually on the enemy team, what do you pick against her as an AD carry, and what do you pick against her as a support? Well, support first is anything that really has some lockdown and also some damage. So things like Nautilus and Thresh are really good against her right now. Both have multiple ways of keeping Jinx in place for quite a long time. Like for Thresh, you have his hook, flay, and box. For Nautilus, you have his hook, passive, and ultimate as well. So speaking of the AD carry, what ADs are actually good against Jinx right now? There are 4 that I think are really good, and they are Graves, Draven, Lucian, and Ashe. Now Graves, Draven, and Lucian, you pick these for the burst. Like they can burst Jinx before she can return any damage, and as we said already, Jinx takes quite a long time to wind up, whereas these champions kill her before she can wind up. Ashe is kind of different because Ashe doesn't have burst damage, but she can match Jinx's range with her rockets, which means that she can zone her from farm really well. Like if you're going to farm with your rockets as Jinx, then Ashe can still match your range, she can still poke you, and she can lock you down with her ultimate when she wants to kill you. So hopefully that gives you a really good idea of when you want to be picking Jinx, why you would, what you pick her with, and what you pick against her as well. Ideally, I'm thinking about doing one of these each week, and if you do, then let me know who you want to see next in the comments, and also let me know what you think, if you have any suggestions, anything like that, but I'll catch you in my next video.